So, this is the REALME C67. It's a phone that's not expensive, it's got quite a few interesting things, and they even copied quite a couple of things from Apple. But, is it really the Android on a budget iPhone? Well, when this video finishes, you're actually going to tell me. Let's start out with the specs. Screen, IPS panel, 90 Hz refresh rate, and it even has 1000 nits of peak brightness. Not too bad. Processor, it actually has a Snapdragon 685, which is pretty interesting because they had been going with Dimensity processors. Good enough for casual gaming, good enough for maybe casual video editing, nothing too heavy, nothing too demanding, good for multitasking, so probably for most people, not an issue. Unless you're a true power user or a content creator like myself. Operating system, Android 14, which is actually quite nice, one of the most recent versions of Android. It also has two versions, one that has 6 gigs of RAM and another one that actually has 8 gigs of RAM. The one we have right here is 8 gigs and you can actually push it up to another 8 gigs, obviously, of digital RAM. I'm quite aware that not a lot of people are fans of having digital RAM. Most of us prefer physical RAM, but at least it's nice to have. Main cameras. Interestingly enough, it only has two. One with 108 megapixels and another one with a 2 megapixel depth sensor. So you're really not using that camera, and most of the time you're using the main sensor with 108. Pictures, I'm gonna be honest with you, I thought they were gonna be a lot worse. Obviously, if you have good lighting, you're gonna get decent results. They're not too overblown. The highlights get a little bit clipped, but not too bad. I've seen worse, definitely. You get nice detail, not too overprocessed, not too oversaturated to compensate for a bad picture. So pretty decent, especially if you're outside and you want something to go out, point and shoot that takes decent pictures. If you're inside, well, you're definitely gonna need good lighting and maybe a little bit of slight editing on your pictures. But if you're doing anything outside, I would say you're actually covered. Video on the otherwise, well, this actually sucks. Only 1080 and it has 30 frames per second, and that's not really what you want in 2024. At least I wouldn't recommend it. It also has something I actually like a lot that's not always available on budget phones, and it's not mentioned that much by a lot of my colleagues, and that's it has stereo speakers. A lot of them only have mono, especially at this price range, so pretty good. Of course, don't expect these speakers to be the best. They're only good enough. Another thing I was actually surprised to see is a 3.5 headphone jack, which is always welcome in my world because I love headphones and I definitely have a lot of them that are still wired. So if you want a cell phone with 3.5 jack, you can still find that on this, but there's a counterpart to that. It won't have USB Type-C OTG. That means you can't connect any accessories through the USB Type-C connector, only for charging, no data transfer, or even using something like maybe a DAC. Selfie camera or front-facing camera, whatever you want to call it. Extremely crappy, only 8 megapixels. Pictures are kind of washed off. I wouldn't recommend it. And you can only film with that camera also at 1080, 30 frames per second. So, not the best Instagram phone or even for content creators. Battery-wise, no real surprise here. It only has 5,000 milliamps, which is pretty standard in this price range. It also comes with a charger, 33 watts. They say it's fast charging. I wouldn't call 33 watts fast charge, especially not in 2024, where we can find crazy phones starting from 67 watts to something like maybe 150 watts. So definitely not fast charge, but at least it comes with a charger, thing that no iPhone really does. Very important. Well, according to REALME, they say it's the unkillable phone. Well, not really. It's pretty resistant though. You can drop it, the screen won't break easily, and it's actually dust and splash resistant. You can't submerge this, you can take pictures under the water, and if you drop it on the sand, it'll be fine. So, nice addition for what you're paying. Well, was my title in my thumbnail actually clickbait? Well, definitely not. REALME did put something in this phone that they're trying to copy from iOS, but it does some things that are pretty good that actually iOS doesn't do, and there's another things where it's a little bit limited. And we're actually talking about the dynamic island that most iPhones have. But this is not called a dynamic island. It's actually called mini capsule. And it does show notifications. It shows battery state. Something I really liked is shows the weather, which is pretty cool. I like that addition. and it's not that easy to do it on iOS. And it does come with extra features like maybe when you're charging the phone, checking your charging status. So Realme says that it's going to be further along the road, developed with different applications. They did open it for developers, so we might find a little bit more actions we can use with it further along the road. But for now, that's most of what you can actually do with it. But nothing that I would say that actually changes the game with a dynamic island, because let's be honest, that's what we should be calling this. Now, does that mean you shouldn't buy this phone and it's actually not worth it? Well, not really, because it's not looking to compete with an iPhone. It's not even in the same ballpark. It's very cheap compared to any iPhone actually out there. And it's actually very cheap compared to a lot of Android phones. So for what you're getting, which is a Snapdragon, simple but capable processor, 8 gigs or maybe 6 depending on where you live. The price I'm going to give you is for the 8 gig version, which I think is nice. So depending on what your needs are or what you use your phone for, you might opt for a cheaper version, which might be the 6 gig version. Drop a comment and tell me what you're actually looking for. And also you get a very nice screen, which is not OLED, not AMOLED, but it's IPS and definitely not bad. Brightness-wise, I think it's good enough if you're in the city, indoors, or maybe with indirect sunlight. If you go to somewhere like the beach or a desert, it might not be enough. You might actually have to do the infamous hand shade, where you do this to actually be able to see your phone. But that still happens to a lot of phones still in 2024. We're barely seeing these crazy phones with a lot more brightness, like maybe the OnePlus 12, which actually has 4,500 nits. By the way, we actually have that phone. Drop a comment below if you want to watch a review. So, if you're looking for a phone that takes decent pictures on the outside, you're not going to film with it, you're going to play maybe something casual, nothing too demanding or too competitive, and you want to use it for social media, listening to music with a headphone jack, and simply a day-to-day phone that won't break on you, I think this is actually a solid option. I've been using it for quite a few weeks. I liked it a lot, and I think the price is great, which is actually $300, $350, or maybe $400, depending where you live. But it starts from $300 to a range of actually $400. At the end of the video, I told you were going to tell me if this is actually like an iPhone. And I think we can agree it's definitely not. But at least it has a nice dynamic island, and they're trying to give you a better experience for a lot less money. Would you buy a REALME C67? If you wouldn't, well, maybe check out this video, which you might actually like.